All right, so go ahead and call meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Mr. Edwards,
Here.
Mrs. Grant,
Here.
Mr. Plum,
Here.
Mrs. Slade. Here. Mrs. Smith.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the additions that Ryan has made throughout the day today. Our motion to that effect.
I'll move.
Moved by Kent, seconded by Israel. We'll have to roll, please.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Plum,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mrs. Slade.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. Our first item beyond that then is to ask for a motion to appoint Jackie Slade as governing authority board member for a third-year term beginning August until 22 to July 2025. Is there a motion to that effect? Moved by George, is there a second? Okay. We'll have the roll, please.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Plum,
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Jackie, for agreeing to continue with us. And now we're going to have the election of officers of the board. And we'll begin with nominations for president. Is there a nomination?
I nominate James for president.
Well, thank you.
Second that nomination.
And thank you. Are there any other nominations for president? Hearing none, we'll have the roll, please.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards, Mr. Plum,
Yes.
Mrs. Slade.
Yes.
And I'll,
Oh,
not
sorry.
vote. All right, and now I ask for nominations for vice president. Is there a nomination for vice president? Very good. Kent is nominated by Jackie. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we will go ahead with, you know what?
I'll second.
Then we'll have a roll, please.
Mrs. Slade,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Plum,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. So we now have our officer. Yes, thank you. Big change. Very good. And what I would like to continue with, I've already talked with Jackie and Dora about their positions. I wondered, would Israel and Kent, would you be willing to continue as the liaisons for personnel and the sponsor respectively?
Yes.
Are you willing? All right. So we will have legislative will be myself, finance will be Jackie, personnel will be Israel, professional development would be Dora, and sponsor relationships would be Ken. Is there a motion to accept those appointments or to approve those appointments? Moved by Dora, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kent. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have the roll, please.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards.
Yes.
Mr. Plum,
Yes.
Mrs. Slade,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes, and I thank you very much. I know our activity as liaisons varies from one month to the next, but it's really nice to have you in those kinds of responsibilities and roles, so thank you. We'll move next to our resolution to set the regular meeting dates, with the understanding that we will change those times as we need to, but basically we continue with the third Tuesday of the month. Is there a motion to approve the dates as stated? Moved by Dora, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jackie, any discussion about that? Hearing none, we'll have the roll, please.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mrs. Slade,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Plum,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. We'll move now to the approval of the minutes of the June 7th board meeting. Seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as submitted to us?
So moved.
Moved by Kent, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Israel. Any discussion? We'll have the roll, please.
Mr. Edwards.
Yes.
Mr. Palumbo.
Yes.
Mrs. Grant.
Yes.
Mrs. Slade.
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes. And thank you, Steve, for coming tonight. We'll turn the meeting over to you for the sponsorship.
Great, thank you, Gene. I am actually trying to kill two birds with one stone right now. I'm in Epicenter. And July 22nd, which Thursday is our due deadline for our validation pool of items. So what does that, layman's terms, we submitted everything we were supposed to submit by June 30th for our proposals, and now they're requesting 10 items from us, which is standard procedure. It used to be that we'd have to provide everything to them. And so our May upload, which if you printed it out looked like this, our compliance upload at the end of June would also look like that. But fortunately, the state kind of backed off that and they said, hey, we're gonna give you, I think it's like 20 to 30 items that could be requested. And then of that, 10 of them have been requested of us. So Allie Downey, who's been very instrumental on the sponsorship side, uploading information and so forth to Epicenter, has gotten our upload in, and I am actually checking it over right now. And we'll do so after the meeting as well, so I can make sure we're all set, we're all ready, so when that 11:59 p.m. on Thursday night window closes, we will have everything into them as needed. We are in what we feel really good shape because of the communication that we have had with our representation, Brian DeSantis, and him looking over everything that we have, uploaded so far, whether it be in May, June, or Thursday. And we are really hoping and praying for an effective or exemplary rating. If that occurs, Brian DeSantis has told me from his own mouth that we will have a 2-year reprieve. Now, we'll still have to do things, but we won't have to upload nearly as much stuff. And that 2-year reprieve would be really nice because keep in mind, the last few years we've been doing stuff with no rating whatsoever.
In the last many years, we've had tons and tons of things to upload.
Ryan did ask me today when we were talking, if we are having an on-site visit. I am not aware of one right now. We can randomly be chosen for that, and typically we are randomly chosen like pretty much every year. But I am not aware of one this year. And I will double check on that to answer Ryan's question, but at this point, as I sit before you, I don't have any recollection of an email requesting in-person visit for the sponsorship part of things. So hopefully everything's going well, and it seems to be. And any questions at this time?
Steve, would you explain to the rest of the board about the corrective action that we're needing to take as a result of what 3 things that needed to be?
Yeah, Ryan pulled it out. The credit card policy, you guys don't have a rewards system or point system. But what needed to be done is that needed to be, and I believe Kelsey's doing it tonight, is basically spoken about and provided a written report to the board so that you guys are aware of that. And I believe she said that you have documentation backing that up with Vista as well, correct?
Yeah, they gave me what they could. It's essentially just information about each of the various card accounts and like which one ours is, but she gave me what she thought would at least back it up.
Now, with that being said, unfortunately, that didn't meet our June 30th deadline. So you're doing that, but you're doing that in July. So there is a corrective action plan for that. We also have corrective action plans for a food allergy committee, basically. Allergy policy. I think you had to create a committee. Is that correct?
So we need to revise the policy with a committee that includes some parent representation and so forth on it. The policy had been approved the past year, but we didn't have the parent input, basically, when revising that policy. We will do that this fall. And then the other item for the corrective action plan deals with graduation sale. So we're working on figuring out the details there. We need some locally defined language that aligns with that community seal. We do have the community seal that's been board approved. That's one of our locally defined seals. We just need to add some additional language.
Yeah, we have an email that from our meeting last week is going up to Brian. Basically, we are asking, how is that verbiage supposed to be? So we will get that done then as soon as I get that email sent off. I'm not actually working a lot in July because I'm on a 240 contract, so I'll get that out first thing in August and go from there. But certainly the community, the graduation seal and those particular seals have been discussed, but there might need to be a little bit more formal action that needs to take place. I do want to say one other thing before there's any other questions. 3 corrective action plans is by far the best that we have ever done. I mean, in my time, I would venture to say, and I don't know specifics, I could check, but I bet you guys were roughly around 10-ish or more each year. So we are certainly trending in the right direction. No question about it.
We're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of items that we had to show compliance, dot our i's, cross our t's, and there's 3 that we're gonna address here a little bit. So we shoot for perfection, didn't quite hit that mark, but we'll work on what we need to do with the other 3
It's
items.
a lot better than ever had.
And we didn't know about those 3 until probably, I don't know, a couple days before the upload because Brian got to review it. And I had no idea. Those 3 items were going to need what we call cap.
Anything else?
I apologize that I'm gonna step out, but we have over gym going on, so.
Enjoy your
I'm gonna
vacation.
get in the gym, but thank you. Hasn't been much of one.
Sure not.
Brian and I were
How many
talking,
kids do you have? We
Yeah.
don't have vacation.
Brian and I were talking business today at the Fremont Rec Center pool over champ swimming. So, but yeah, hey, we're not going to Louisville though, for some softball. I'll just be a Fort Wayne now. So, all right, well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
With no public present for public participation. We'll move on to the board member liaison reports. The only thing that I have to report is having met with Brian and Kelly to continue to do some planning for next year. And I'd like for you, if you would please, to turn to the next page in your folder that has the goals that I had sent out to everyone. These are the goals for the 22-23 school year. And I hadn't gotten any negative feedback about these goals. We have some baseline that we need to be collecting so we know the degree to which we're starting, the points at which we're starting, so that we know if we've made progress. But as a whole, I think we can be real positive about the fact that we are looking at goals to improve student achievement. And that these goals coincide with the goals that have been established by the one plan with the Ohio Department of Education. So that's very good. You'll note the 3rd goal deals with positive behavior instructional systems and supports. And I know, Dora, that we've talked about professional development along that line. So that's something we as a group will certainly want to be supporting. The sustainability goal addresses a goal of 600 students. And a conversation that Ryan and Jackie and Kelsey and I will have probably in September or October is exactly how many students are needed to sustain our personnel levels. We know that we have ESSER funds until the end of the 23-24 school year, but we want to be prepared at that time to sustain our employee level that we have, the staff employees. And then the career focus for students implies that we're going to continue with the Reach for Success program for next year, which is not an inexpensive program, but it's one that is covered by ESSER and one that we really know. I'm sorry. Title I, sorry, I knew it was covered, sorry. But it's definitely a program that we see it benefits the kids. So that's another area that we want to plan for. I think, Brian, we have these goals as a motion, don't we, to approve these goals?
We do. Under board president's report. Right?
Okay, very good. Is there anything else that anyone else has to report? If not, okay, if not, I'll accept the motion to approve the goals as submitted to you.
So moved.
Moved by Kent, is there a second? Second by Dora. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have to vote, please.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Palumbo,
Yes.
Mrs. Slade,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. All right, Kelsey.
Okay, first thing I've got for you is our credit card reward points for 2021-2022. Verified with Vista, we have a Visa business card. There are no rewards associated with the account. The documentation kind of goes into further detail about what is associated with each of the various cards, just to provide some documentation supporting that, but we do not currently receive any rewards with our credit card. Does anybody have any questions? I'm actually gonna skip ahead to item D. If you look at the packet that has Michael Barris' name in the top left corner, this was from last year. And this was the gap reporting that we approved. And we actually chose fee option number 3, and just for a refresher, the 3 options, option 1 was a 1-year agreement for $3,100 per year. Option 2 was $2,800 per year for 2 years. And the third option was a 3-year engagement at $2,600 per year, so it was the least expensive. And we did sign up for option 3 for a 3-year agreement, but I still felt like we should have reviewed it this year and just rediscuss the expense, just to let you know it's upcoming. You know, it's something we do every year. But following that, you can skip past the minutes. Our first item is our cash reconciliation as of June 30th. You can see we ended with a total fund balance of $5,660,596.69. If there's no questions, we can move on to our disbursement summary. And I do have a couple of notes for you on the disbursement summary. First expense I wanted to point out to you, on the right-hand side, I believe it's the 5th expense down. You'll see a pretty expensive Margaretta bill. We paid our July bill in June because it helps to go toward our maintenance of effort. We put a portion of our transportation as part of our shared services. We put a portion of that towards special ed transportation. And maintenance of effort doesn't look at whether the expense is for this fiscal year or last fiscal year, just that looks at when it was paid. So we paid it June 30th, and a little bit of that helped us go toward our maintenance of effort. I will pause briefly just to give an update on that. Based on the FTE that they provided in our final June payment for our special ed, and then they also posted it to our maintenance of effort. Based on that FTE and what we feel like were some exceptions and extra additions to our maintenance of effort, I feel like we passed it. The second June 30th pass, uploaded our supporting documentation. I got the initial email saying that we didn't pass it, but that was without review of any of the additional documentation. So I followed up with an email, just let them know, hey, we've uploaded what we feel are exceptions and additions that need to be considered. So I don't think we'll receive a response too soon. I think they start getting more into it towards September. But as of right now, I do feel like we've met it. We had some larger expenses that I'm going to point out to you, but we didn't know until maintenance of effort released that special ed FTE exactly how much we had to spend to meet it, because we went by our per pupil expenditure. It was a little bit below our total. So we had to either meet it for spend the total amount the same or spend the same amount per pupil. Our per pupil came out a little bit lower, and we didn't know that until I think it was like June 25th. And so Betty came in for payroll June 30th. We had a very limited time to make some of those expenses. So we're going to look to retroactively approve them because they are a little high. But it was either spend the money to try and meet the maintenance buffer, or you're going to end up paying it back to the state. So we thought retroactively approving them was probably our best bet. So the Margaret bill is high because we paid our July bill, and then we also had the resource officer charge that actually comes out of ESSER. So about $17,000 of that bill went toward our resource officer. A little further down, almost about 3/4 of the way, you'll see an expense for $19,906. That's just a Dickinson and Wright bill. That's our attorney bill. They billed us quarterly this time. They had been doing it monthly for a little bit, but this one was quarterly, which is why it looks a little bit larger than the others. On the next page, towards the bottom, you'll see an expense for $12,599.67 and $9,600. These are the two MOE expenses I was talking about. The $12,000, that entire thing wasn't all maintenance of effort, but when you process purchase orders separately for things, but it's the same vendor, so it's just Amazon, they all lump together. But part of that expense was over $5,000. It's one of the ones that were retroactively approved. 9,600. This is actually for virtual reality, and actually I'm discussing it pretty in depth, and it's really exciting for our special ed population. They can actually get hands-on job experience without having to go out into the workforce. Ashley said that there are places that are actually doing like construction equipment training and things like that using virtual reality so that they don't have to risk damage to equipment or injury, things like that. There's also a lot of uses with just regular subjects. I know a lot of students are very visual learners, and so one of the best uses right now is for geometry, to allow them, see shapes and interact with things in a different way. So we're pretty excited about it. Not positive it's an expense that we'll sustain and continue making each year, but we had to spend the money and we're excited to provide it for the kids as we can. I think that's it for the disbursement summary, unless anyone has any questions. All right, we can go ahead and flip past our outstanding disbursement summary as well, and we'll move on to our spreadsheet. In our bottom right section, you can see our salaries and benefits were low for the month. We talked about this happening because we did get approval on our ESSER budget to move Lyric's expense from the year into it. So that entire movement happened in June, which is why you see such low amounts. I will continue paying Lyric through ESSER while we can. I've actually applied to pay ASEAN, who is up for the second attendance position, through our non-competitive fund. Our non-competitive fund is about $71,000. His expense comes just a little bit above that, but I believe it will help us be sustainable with our staffing in the future. I want to try to use some of these other grants, as well as use up as much of our ESSER as we can, but I want to make sure that we can sustain as much of the staff as we possibly can. So having his expense in non-competitive, they haven't approved the budget yet, but it should be an allowable expense. It looks promising. So he should come out of non-competitive. There's another note on there for the other objects, just that we paid our Margaretta bill in June. That's why those are a little bit above 100. Supplies were up a little bit because of some of those maintenance of effort purchases, but if you look in the bottom left category, we came in below our expenses in every category except for other objects, but overall, our total expenses were at about 86%, so below what we had predicted. Our total FTE on our June payment was 507.56, and we did come in the positive in June at a positive $66,000. Are there any questions on this section? I did include our June monthly payment because we met so early in June that we didn't have a chance to look at it. Our June payment was about $200,000 after retirement and after our paybacks. You'll see that number at the very bottom right. And then if you flip to the next page, this was our June payment total for the year, but when it pulled the report, even though it was for our June payment, it was data as of 5/24/2022. So it might have been a little bit overestimated, but again, revenue-wise, we're looking at column lowercase b, and we definitely came in higher than what we had initially anticipated for the year. So that was very promising. That gave us a very positive end to the year.
What are the other adjustments, Kelsey?
Some of that was, we talked about, it had to do with the educational service centers, like kids going to UOB and things like that. They took some other adjustments. And I believe they added in some of the, oh no, it was just that. So when I look at our July payment, the next page, actually, if you go down to transfers and other adjustments, you'll see they predict a similar amount to cover that. Now, our July payment, if you look at the bottom right, it looks very high, it looks very good. That is based on 100% FTE because it goes off of June's FTE percentages. I predict we'll see an adjustment in September, October to true up for that because we're not going to be at 100% this year. So that payment will not continue once we start getting our true FTE percentage, and we will probably see an adjustment for it.
And that true up happens about in October?
Yeah, typically October is when we start with our actual percentages, and they'll work to true up for the first 3 months of the year. And then the final page I've included is our July payment summary, where they give us our predictions for the year. Again, I anticipate these being very high. They're based on our 100% FTE. We'll probably come in somewhere close to about 68% of this. We looked at a more detailed description when we went through how we predicted our revenue for our 5-year forecast. And as I develop our revenue budget for this year, we'll look at it again. We'll look at it a little bit more in detail, but it'll be significantly lower than that.
So it'll be lower than 191,097?
It'll be lower than if you look in column B, and then row F, the 6,171,000. That's our predicted total.
Okay.
Well, plus when you add in the facilities, if you go down to line N, that's our total predicted net state funding, 6,228,000. It'll come in a lot lower than that. But that was estimated on our 5-year forecast, and we still, for this year, predict that with our ESSER funding and our other grants, that we should still come out at a positive. Not nearly as much as we did this year, but so, yeah.
That's great. Are there any questions for Kelsey? Let's just look at this to make sure that you got. And resolution authorizing the use of ESSER funds to pay for the cyber liability.
Yep, so I've got E and F left to talk about. That's this separate bundle that says participation agreement on the front.
Okay.
This is our liability insurance. We approve this every year with Sorsa. It is a bigger expense, but it's one of those things that you have to do. You have to have it. New this year is the required for the cyber liability coverage, but what they've actually done is they've included a written out resolution to use ESSER funds for the purpose, and they also included the attached letter from their attorney just stating the allowable use. So what he shared with me is that a lot of schools are using ESSER to pay for covering the new cyber, especially with the online learning environment. Kids, if we're working remotely, they have to access online curriculum. So this is, you know, newer, and we have to cover this separately. It's getting expensive, so it feels reasonable that it falls under ESSER. It's about page 10. So the pages are numbered front and back up until 8. And then there's a page 9, and then there's a page 10 with red source mode, mine's red, there's probably some across the top. But that has our total invoice on it. So this is the total amount that we would be approving, $13,909. It's similar to last year. Not too different. The cyber is new, but if we choose, we can use ESSER funds to pay for that. And we do have a lot of ESSER funds, so I feel like it would be fine to put that expense in ESSER.
So do we need to, in terms of our resolutions here, there's separate resolutions, do we need to specify the amounts for E and include the amount for F?
Yeah, actually, that would probably be a nice detail to include. So E would be the 13,909 minus, that's the total, and then if you take out the cyber minus the 1,550, the cyber, the cost that we would cover by ESSER would be the 1,552. So I can.
I got 12,350.
12,300.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
All right, is there anything else, Kelsey?
That's it.
Okay, is there a motion to include items A through F with the inclusion of those two figures? Moved by Kent, is there a second? Second by Dora. Any questions for council? Hearing none, we'll have a roll, please.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant, Mr. Paloma,
Yes.
Mrs. Slade,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes, thank you so much. Very good, very good. All right, let's move on to the superintendent's report and recommendations and information.
Start off with, let's take a look at our enrollment status. So in your folders, next paper here is breakdown of the enrollment. There's not been too much change here over the summer. We are not starting enrollment until August 1st. So I will say that we have close to 65 pending enrollments right now as of today. That number is growing every day as we get new requests. So to be at July 19th with 65 requests for new enrollments, that's pretty good right now. Because they're going to keep coming in over the next month and a half. So we're going to be very busy enrolling students here from August 1st. But as of today, we have 477 students that are still enrolled with us that are carrying over from last year that have not graduated. All but one of those do reside within the 6 county radius that we focused on. We do still have one student that had been grandfathered in from Upper Sandusky.
The advertising is helping.
Say that again.
I think the advertising is helping increase that.
I do. In the spring, we had a form that students or parents would check mark. Not too many of them check mark the box for calling use, seeing. But I feel there's been a lot of people that have noticed it, sent me a text or an email, and said, hey, I saw the advertisement for the school. So I think people are seeing it. It's helping just to make sure that Townsend's in their mind, that they see and remember that we exist, we're here to help students. And I think people that see it also sometimes share with others, maybe that they might benefit from it. So I think I don't necessarily have data and surveys that show that it's making a huge impact, but I think it is maybe indirectly benefiting us in terms of performance.
Got a question. So the 65 that we have currently waiting, are we able to set them up so when day one hits, it's an easy flow, or is it all at once? So all the information has to be uploaded, or however we.
So how this works is they have ahead of time where they have to complete forms and final forms, and then when they come in, there's just a few things that we have to finish now that in the process. However, we have to wait till the rollover takes place with our updated documents and stuff, and that'll take place here towards the end of July in final forms, and then we can have those people go on the final forms, complete those forms, and then we'll have them on the schedule to come in and finish the enrollments. So.
And with the, knowing that they're in waiting, then what kind of communication goes on between Townsend and those individuals to make sure that we keep them and that they're comfortable? That's kind of what you're getting at too.
So when they reached out, just there was initial contact of letting them know that, you know, this will take place in August. They'll have to complete forms of final forms. That will be followed up with them. There's not multiple communication between those 2 points, I would say, but they know that come August that the enrollment's going to take place.
Any other questions?
Okay, the second informational item I have is to recognize Terminus One. If you haven't noticed, we now have a sidewalk that connects the parking lot across the street to the crosswalk, which is very nice, very beneficial, especially in the winter time and when it's rainy out, so that people do not have to walk through the mud across the road and get to their cars. So we're very grateful for that donation from Hervis Parker Concrete. Actually, it's on Margaret property, so we also recognized them last month. Margaret's board meeting here recently. Margaret was going to send them a thank you on behalf of Margaret Schools.
It really looks nice.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah,
I can't believe what the difference it makes.
yeah.
We slipped and fallen in the mud last winter. I'm very grateful that we have. Okay, and then moving on here to new business, we have a ton of items here to still see. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through and read these, maybe say a few items with each one. And then before we vote, we can pause and have conversation on any items that you wanna discuss further. If you feel there's a need to split any of these apart, go separately, we can do that, or we can group them together and vote. Okay, so item A is a resolution to approve the awarding of high school diplomas to following students upon successful completion of our graduation requirements as set forth by the state of Ohio. We have 4 individuals this month there. That brings our total up to 101 graduates. We will have some more here before the summer's over. We're just getting summer and of course testing scores back. So the next week or so we'll be going through those and seeing who else might be graduating. Items B through G are items that we approve on an annual basis. Item B is a resolution to waive the reading of minutes with understanding that such minutes will be distributed to the members prior to the date of each meeting for the 2022-2023 school year. Item C is a resolution to authorize the treasurer to invest interim funds for the 2022-23 school year. Item D is a resolution to authorize the treasurer to pay bills, provided that funds are available, and to report monthly to the board of directors those bills that were paid for the 2022-23 school year. Item E is a resolution to authorize the superintendent to approve or disapprove of applications for professional meeting leave for staff that conform to established board policy and that are within the amount appropriated for such activities for the 2022-23 school year. Item F is a recommendation to authorize the superintendent to employ such temporary personnel as needed for emergency situations and present to the board for approval and ratification of employment contracts at the next board meeting for the 2022-23 school year. And item G is a recommendation to authorize the superintendent and treasurers to act as agents for the board in submitting applications and management of federal and state grants for the 2022-23 school year. Moving on, then item H is a recommendation to approve Karen Berg for 5 additional days pay at her 2021-22 per diem rate for attending the Erie County Business Boot Camp in August 2022. This takes place the 1st and 2nd week of August. And Erie County Business Boot Camp is tied to the Erie County Business Advisory Council that I'm a part of. Also, they're connected with North Point ESC. So this is really an exciting event where educators from all different schools come together in our area and explore, creative ways to continue to look at helping our students to be career ready, which aligns to one of our goals that we talked about earlier. So I had asked Karen to apply, because you actually have to apply and be approved and accepted for the business boot camp, probably back in January. So I asked her to put an application on behalf of Townsend. So these, she was approved. These 5 days that she will be attending that business boot camp are in addition to her contract days for the school.
Is there a cost for the boot camp?
We have to pay $100. We're going to cover that.
No.
That's the school. She does have an opportunity to earn some ASH credit as well if she chooses.
Good.
Item I is a recommendation to accept the resignation of intervention specialist Drew Crabtree for the 2022-2023 school year. Drew was one of the individuals that we had hired earlier in the spring, and right before, a little bit before July 10th, he got an offer from Perkins to be an IS there, and Perkins is where he's from, and that's where his heart was. And I was understanding of his wish to work there. We were disappointed to lose him, no doubt. We thought he was going to be a very solid intervention specialist for us, but I did allow him to resign to that other position. Item J is a recommendation then to approve Asim Reddy for a contract as an attendance specialist on a 194-day contract for the 2022-2023 school year at a salary of $44,000, including non-administrative staff, Exhibit B. If you remember, Asim Reddy previously worked here as one of our attendance specialists a few years ago. When we had to make some budget cuts, when the school was in a tough situation at the time, unfortunately, he was one of the individuals that did lose his job at the time. We posted the attendance specialist position because we really want to focus on improving student attendance this year. And we are going to have a mechanism in place with the help of VLA and companies that they work with to build us a program that measures not just the funding percentage, but the actual attendance percentage for our students, which is going to be a huge help, not only for our students, but our teachers and our attendance specialists. So Lyric and then also Oscar for it's really going to allow us to try to re-engage these students quicker and hopefully not have as many students be withdrawn due to the 72-hour. We did have nearly 50 applicants for that position, and we had a rating system. Tara and I went through all the resumes and rated them all, and then we took the 4 highest rated individuals from that pool and we brought them in. And after doing interviews, which their circle did participate in, we just felt that Asim was the right choice for this position. Okay, moving on. Item K is a resolution to convert all 220-day contracts to 210-day contracts for the 2022-2023 school year with no salary changes, so no salary reductions. This would impact the following individuals' contracts: Barb Boyd, Robin Dar, Robert Hamilton, and Troy Lewis. So we have these positions that are 220-day contracts. They do not have any holidays, paid work days that would count towards their 220, nor do they have vacation days. And that's how all of our non-administrative positions are. But their contract days, 220, are more than any of our other contracts other than administration, which are 230. With us being open 3 days a week in the summer, if you were to work every school day, every single Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with no days off, that would come to right around 215 days. So there's really no opportunities for them. It's hard for them to get to 220, first of all. But secondly, there's very little room for them to take a few days off here and there. So what I'm proposing here is that we take care of these individuals that have some of the contracts with more days, not necessarily the highest paid positions in the district, but working more days. They do a lot for us. I recommend that we take care of these individuals and reduce their contracts to 210 days moving forward this year, and most likely in future years as well. However, not changing their salary.
I think one of the issues we ran into is that in the past, the exhibit Bs weren't always handed out. And so when we, pointed out, well, the holidays aren't included on your exhibit B, like the response Robbie gave us was, well, Pete said, and so we really want to leave the exhibit B as is because it affects all the non-administrative contracts. But then make it doable so that they can work their days and not feel like.
So some of our employees were told by previous superintendent that they could mark certain holidays as work days on their calendar. However, that does not align to their contract in exhibit B. So I don't want to be telling our staff members to do a practice that does not align with their contract, because what that does is sets us up for audit issues. When somebody comes, the state comes in, the state auditor, and they say, let me see the work calendar of that individual. Days they work, okay, let me see their contract. Why are you, allowing people to work on a holiday when that's not a day that's covered by their contract? So we're trying to protect Townsend, but also make sure we take care of our employees as well.
Is this, my question about this is, don't we need to have this be the case for the 2021-22 school year? And then the 22 and 23 school year is something the board wanted to discuss?
We could consider that. I mean, we're close to the end of that 2021-22 school year. And I know one of the issues was that we have an employee that's having a difficult time of making the 220 days on their calendar because of what we discussed. I'm fine with that. However, we have people who have maybe possibly worked 220 by working maybe some extra days over holidays or some Mondays and Fridays.
So the intent is for this to be for the next school year.
Yeah, and then I'll try to talk and work with the individual that has concerns.
It's my understanding that the board would like to discuss this in executive session and then come back on this
Okay.
particular item.
We can do that. Okay, item L is a resolution to approve student handbook for the 2022-2023 school year, which was shared earlier today in email. I got the revisions from Dickinson Wright. Did change and put our new school logo on the front page of our handbook, as you can see here. This is going to be revealed at our open house on August 24th. Big event that night. Some giveaways, a lot of fun activities planned that night. Okay, item M then is a recommendation to retroactively approve the spending of $10,556.27 on laptops, virtual reality headsets, and USB connectors for the special education department, and $9,600 for virtual reality software in connection with the MOE. And this is the item that Kelsey talked about earlier, where we had to have a certain percentage for spending tied to our special education department population. So this is a retroactive. Okay, item N is a recommendation to approve a contract with the Erie County Sheriff's Department for a full-time school resource officer for the 2022-2023 school year. This, there's a copy of this in your folder here. Sheriff Sigsworth shared this contract, and our contract is a 12-month contract. So the Erie County Sheriff's Department got a request for several new resource officers, and the commissioners said that these new requests were taken well beyond their budget, Because typically with a school resource officer, the county has to cover that individual's salary over the summer months for 3 months. So with these additional requests coming in from different schools, they're beyond their budget for the upcoming school year. So what Sheriff Sigsworth relayed to us, commissioners, is that we would probably need to look at having somebody here 12 months, but having them actually here full-time for the entire year. So the contract here is broken down. You will notice that there is a one-time expense to provide the gear for that deputy. One-time equipment cost of $10,000. There is a cruiser fee built in there, $8,000. And he did say that this is maximum worst case scenario if somebody comes at the top of the salary scale. I believe he has somebody on the lower end of the pay scale that he's found, who is coming from the Erie County Jail, I believe. I don't have the name right on the tip of my tongue. I have to look that up. So the total salary with benefits is probably going to come in below that projected $119,000 there. With the events that have happened, especially with down in Texas and so forth, it's a crazy world that we live in right now. And I think we need to take more security measures as a school. We're looking to get a device buzzer system installed downstairs where Becky Rehab sits at the front window there, or the front door, where we can lock that down and she can use the buzzer system. We do have buzzer systems in Robbins and in the enrollment office. However, they're not always in there, not always present. So it probably makes more sense to put a buzzer out with Becky Rehab so that she can let people in. So that's one thing that we're looking at doing to improve security. And then the other would be hiring a full-time SRO. I know that there was some legislation passed that permits teachers, staff to carry a gun if the school approves. I can tell you I'm not a fan of that. I don't think that teachers carrying guns and staff carrying guns is ideal. I think we're setting ourselves up for some potential dangerous situations, especially with less training taking place for those individuals than a typical resource officer. I think having somebody in that resource officer position here full time is the more ideal option.
The payment, Kelsey, is coming from,
ESSER. The one thing we'll have to look at is, Ryan, do you know how they're gonna bill? Okay. We'll have to look at, and this is on my agenda coming up rapidly, but as we move through ESSER 2, we're still in ESSER 2 right now, but ESSER 3 has that additional requirement that we've talked about, that 20% of what you spend has to go toward learning loss. Our tutors definitely apply to that. I think our student success plan coordinators do, because I think they look at learning gaps and where students are lacking, things like that. So we're going to try and tie as many expenses as learning loss as we can. We just have to take a look at total, what we're spending, and make sure we're not, going too crazy with the other things where we can't meet that 20%. This is where I think the grant planning as kind of more of a whole unit as an administrative unit will come in play, because like we just got an ESSER budget approved, and I know the next item on the list we're looking to potentially pay for through ESSER, and I think it'll be allowable, but I have to get those things approved in the budget. And the more times you resubmit a budget, kind of the more you're likely to get a grant audit. So I'd like moving forward to start, and ESSER is difficult, I know, because we randomly have things come up that we're like, oh, we can maybe pay for that. So it is hard, but I would like to try and plan ahead as much as we can so that we do as little budget revisions as possible. So the resource officer is already in ESSER, but not for that amount. It was for kind of what we paid this year. It was before this was established. I don't think the increase will be a problem for ESSER 2. And then I also think this next item could possibly be paid for the dresser. I think attendance tracking goes right along with, you know, COVID-19 and students wanting to stay home and not come in the building, so I don't think that'll be a problem either. But it'll take a budget revision before I get final approval on that.
I have to share with the board that I talked with Brian and Kelsey about this in terms of wondering if the sheriff's department, if we're required to hire a resource officer through the sheriff's department, or if we can hire someone directly. I don't know the answer to that. And then the other issue is, while this is capped at $1,119,000, that's a lot of money, even in a cap. We need to open up conversations with the commissioners, the county commissioners, the sheriff's department, and our schools. And I'm sure, especially if the legislature does not approve any additional funding for school resources officers through the legislature, school districts are not going to be able to maintain that kind of expenditure. So we're okay for this year, but and next year, but as those ESSER funds go away, well, again, we need to plan for how are we going to possibly cover that kind of expense.
Absolutely. Hopefully in time, you know, the state can make some budget changes and provide schools with some money towards SROs. That would be a good job. Okay, so that's item N. Item O is a recommendation to approve a contract with TRC Gen through Jefferson County ESC for the development of a new attendance tracking program at an amount of $6,304. This is the attendance program I discussed earlier in collaboration with the LA. Item P is a resolution to approve participating in the Provision 2 option for the National School Lunch Program for the 2022-23 school year to provide students with free meals at breakfast and lunch. So we just missed the cutoff for the percentage needed to be part of the community eligibility provision. However, through Cindy's work, she discovered that there's a Provision 2, which is similar to that. The rate of reimbursement is not quite as much. It's going to require a little bit more paperwork, more tracking with a point of sale system where we track the free meals that are being given through that. But the Provision 2 program will still allow us to provide free meals in school for students.
The point of sale system that Dave and Cindy kind of took the lead on researching which company to go through. It looks like the cost is going to come to a little bit over $400 a month to rent the equipment and the sophomore, which is significantly less than what I thought it was going to be. So that looks promising.
Thank you to Cindy for finding that.
Yeah, they worked hard on that.
Okay, item Q is a long list of policies here that we've revised here recently. Work with Dickinson Wright, our lawyer. I'm not going to go proofread all these.
Thank you.
A lot of them, you're welcome. A lot of them are in the 300s, which is our staff handbook portion of our policies. We've revised those recently. A lot of credit goes to Gene as well for taking the time to look through those policies and work with Adam on that. And then finally, item R is resolution now defining appendix items. These are items we don't necessarily have to approve, but it's important that we recognize the changes or that they're in existence, because when we do compliance items later on, we've shown that the boards recognize that those are in existence. So with that being said, I'd like to open things up for any further discussion.
Does anyone have any questions on what Ryan presented? Now, the policies and just the information eventually will all be online, so they'll be available, but I think, Brian, you sent us the latest draft of those. We were making some changes even today about that, and I really thank Brian and Kelsey for helping with that along with Adam and Stephanie. It was very good. I feel so much better about the policies that we have here and so what I'd like to do is entertain a motion to approve the resolutions or action items A through J and L through
We're gonna hire an intervention specialist to step down.
So, talking to Ashley, we did post the position. And there's very little interest out there. Just at this point in the year, it's hard to find an intervention specialist, because there's such a shortage. Talking to Ashley, she thinks that we are okay to start the school year off in terms of our caseload. Who knows, a month or two from now, what our enrollments look like. We're gonna have to continue to keep an eye on that. We're hopeful that if we get at that point where we need to add someone, hopefully it's maybe halfway through the year. And like we've done the last couple of years, we've been able to find somebody at that point, whether it's a graduate or somebody that's out there available. So we'll keep, I think we always need to keep our options open on that. Just continue to evaluate where our enrollment's at.
and is that posting still up then on the ODE website?
No, it's not any longer.
Okay,
It's,
does it need to be?
I could extend it.
That would make sense. If somebody moves into the area or whatever. Are there any other questions about these items? So is there a motion to approve action items A through L, as I said? J and L through R. I'll move. Moved by Dora, is there a second? Seconded by Jackie. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll, please.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mrs. Slade,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Paloma,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. What I'd like to do, is entertain a motion to briefly move into executive session to discuss the employment of personnel.
So moved.
Moved by Kent, is there a second? Okay, seconded by Dora. And we'll have a roll, please.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Paloma,
Yes.
Mrs. Slade,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. Very good. We'll come out of executive session. What's the time, please?
8:16.
8:16. With no action taken. And what I'd like to do is return to action item L and have a motion to approve action, I'm sorry, K. Motion to approve action item K regarding the reduction of the 220-day contracts to 210 for the employees that are listed. Is there a motion to that effect?
I move.
Okay, moved by Israel, seconded by Dora. And we'll have the roll, please.
Mr. Paloma,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mrs. Slade,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. If there's no other business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Ken. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Well, let's do that one.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Brian and Kelsey.